War aber ein cooles Video. Dann, was schauen wir uns als nächstes an? Wollen wir gleich bei Yu-Gi-Oh! Bei Pokémon bleiben? Dann schauen wir uns das mal an. Data Scientists build price prediction model to find overvalued and undervalued Pokémon Cards. Bin ich mal sehr gespannt. Dieser Herr kann anscheinend in die Zukunft schauen. Mal schauen.
I just built a pricing model that within 90% accuracy can predict top chase cards for modern Pokemon sets. How do we do it? Well, I was spending some time trying to understand how the odds of pulling a specific card can contribute to the price. And it turns out to be pretty important, but it's only part of the story. What about the demand?
Also bisher sagt er, dass seltene Karten teuer sind. Okay.
So I've tried to quantify these forces. And what's been really interesting is not only how accurate it has ended up being, even with a very small amount of data that I'm using to model from, but it really helps highlight some of the outliers. Some of these are really overvalued. Some of these are undervalued, potentially. You know?
Ja, die halbe Liste ist wahrscheinlich overvalued, wenn wir uns mal hier anschauen. Was haben wir hier? 151, Glurak, geisteskrank teuer. Wirklich, macht gar keinen Sinn. Was haben wir noch? Quajutsu, das ist, wo ist meine Maus hin? Ist okay bewertet. Dann T-Rocket Mewtwo, Destiny Rivals, auch finde ich eigentlich viel zu teuer, muss ich sagen. Also vor allem oben, wenn ich sehe Ascended Heroes, da ist eigentlich jede Karte, was kostet Mega-Gänger Draw? 1000 Euro oder so? Das macht alles keinen Sinn. Aber was willst du machen? Das ist der Markt, Angebot und Nachfrage. Darum. Aber gut, mal gucken, was er zu sagen hat.
For the most part, there are some patterns here, and there's definitely some cards out there that are way above and below. We should be seeing for market price for some of these top chase
Oh mein Gott. Das ist ein bisschen Wunschdenken, habe ich das Gefühl.
Let's jump into it. The first way we're quantifying supply, I'm using what I'm saying is called pool cost. So how much does it cost to pull a card, a specific chase card from a set?
Das hört sich schon gut an.
Well, if you know anything about the hobby, then you know that every set has different rarity tiers, and within that rarity tier, you have a certain number of packs where that card could show up.
Wenn er gleich einen Gelatin wie zeigt, ich gehe Crash out.
So this is what we call the pull rate. Now, if you multiply that pull rate by the number of cards that exist in that rarity tier, then you get on average the number of packs that you would have to pull to eventually find that card. And what you see here is that there are some sets where it's really, really hard to pull a specific card. In particular, Prismatic Evolutions. Like, that was one of the hardest sets to pull a specific card. You have a select number of cards that
Aber hast auch viele gute Karten drin, muss man sagen.
And even though it looked like, yeah, it's 1 in 45 packs, that's pretty generous compared to all the other sets. But because there are so many cards in that rarity slot that everyone was chasing, that you still had to rip a ton of packs to finally get the card that you're looking for. So that's really what matters in the supply side. So if you think about it, if the card is easier to pull, then of course there's going to be more supply. People are going to be ripping packs and finding it all the time. It's not as valuable. Next is the desirability. So this is the demand side, and I'm calling this a desirability index. And I'm using 3 things to try and weight into the score. The first is character premium. The second would be artwork and the hype around specific cards. And then the last would be universal appeal. So let's talk about all 3 real quick.
Das erste ist natürlich das Gleiche.
Again, like I said, it's intrinsic to the TCG. So the way we're quantifying this is if you were to take every card that's been printed with that character on it across every rarity tier and across every set that's been released, how does that character rank across all that on average? Charizard, on average, is a 1.1 rank. So almost 1.0. Umbreon, it's 1.3. And then etc. Mew is 1.4, Dragonite is 2.3. And then if you just normalize that down to a 1 to 10 score, that's how we get this part of the desirability index. Now, next would be the artwork and the slash hype, this contextual kind of...
Finde ich eigentlich am wichtigsten, das Artwork. Bringt dir nichts, wenn du ein cooles Pokémon hast, aber ein scheiß Artwork.
The only way I can kind of describe it is just to look at some examples you can judge for yourself. It's not going to be perfect, but here's some examples of 10s. The Bubble Mew. Universally loved card. The artwork is amazing. The Pokemon is a high character.
Shiny
premium.
Mew, yeah.
The lore behind Mew. It's the artist that designed this card. Like, there's all things that come together. That
ich weiß nicht, ob der Artist ob das so ein Ding ist bei der Karte.
Mega Charizard. It's already obviously a highly desired Pokemon. And then this, everyone is saying, you know, generally the consensus is This is the best Charizard that's ever been printed in terms of artwork. So therefore, it's a 10. So a 9 would be something like the
Ist das beste Charizard Artwork ever printed? Glaube ich nicht. Was wäre das Beste? Ich kann nicht Base-Hit sagen. Ich bin nicht so crazy Base-Hit-Enjoyer. Ich hätte gesagt, für mich persönlich ist das Mega Charizard aus Evolutions, wo noch so links und rechts diese Flügel über diese Karte gehen. Finde ich persönlich, das ist das beste Artwork, hätte ich jetzt gesagt.
From Destined Rivals. Even though it's the top chase card from Destined Rivals, one of the best sets that was released in the Scarlet and Violet era.
Ja, ist schon ein ziemlich cooles Set.
There's some like lack of universal consensus around the artwork. And then what would a 1
Ja, Leute haben, glaube ich, sich ein bisschen mehr vorgestellt. Ne? Die dachten, Giovanni Mewtwo, das wäre irgendwie ein Banger, aber ist solide Karte, kann ich nichts sagen.
Bun, which I didn't even know this Pokemon existed until I did this analysis. This blew my mind. This is a Dotson dog, but it's made out of bread. Okie dokie. I actually don't hate the artwork, to be honest with you. It's just like, what are we looking at? And it kind of reflects in the price. That's a 1, okay? It's subjective, but still. All right, lastly, for the desirability index would be just another external force. So we're using Google Trends just to understand universal appeal. The cards that most people go to who are new to the hobby are going to be the ones that Pokemon that they.
Bei dir am Face Charizard?
So the Charizards and the Pikachu.
Welches war das nochmal?
This is where you see it in Google.
Das Shiny, ja. Finde ich auch besser als das andere Crystal Non-Shiny Charizard. Ja, das ist auch sehr tough.
Trends, they're the most searched by far. And then finally, here's our desirability scores and how we weight them. 45% weight for character premium, 45% weight for card features, artwork, and hype, and I'm using just a small remaining 10% for the external factor, just because there's a lot of big swings for those higher popular Pokemon. So now, let's put this into the model and start seeing how.
Bin ich mal gespannt, weil bis jetzt hat er gefühlt nur Angebot und Nachfrage erklärt. Jetzt bin ich gespannt, was Bro am gucken ist.
Prediction. Look at how tightly correlated desirability is, even though these are all within the same rarity tier. You know, across sets they have different mixes of how hard they are to pull, but generally speaking, just desirability alone can explain a large portion of the price. Next would be the pull cost. So you can see there is some clustering that's happening, and especially when you get out here to the highest pull cost, you see these do.
Ja gut, das macht auch Sinn, ne? Desto teurer ist es, eine Karte zu pullen, desto mehr wird sie später wert sein, ne? Weil es ziemlich teuer ist, an diese Karte zu kommen. Das sieht man ja bei Ascended Hero gerade, dass alle Karten kurz nach Release, unabhängig davon, dass es ein geistkrank gutes Set ist, Ascended Heroes, aber es ist leider, vor allem wenn du jetzt dir anschaust, irgendwie englische Produkte in Deutschland, die ranzuholen, ist geistkrank teuer. Deutsch ist auch schon schwer, aber Englisch ist geistkrank teuer. Und dann ist es normal, dass halt irgendwie ein Gänger für irgendwie über 1.000 Euro Raw hast, leider.
Have the highest prices as well. Now there are some very clear outliers here, and I'm just going to be like, hello, Mega Charizard, what are you doing out here? You were playing with the big boys at this $800 price, and your pull cost is super, super low. All right, let's pull.
Ja, weil es halt ein aktuelles Set einfach ist, weil du das überall kaufen kannst.
Let's break it down. Here we go. When you put these two variables together, how good is it at predicting the market price? Well, even with just a small amount of data that we're using for this, this R-squared value basically is saying that about 88% of the price variation can be explained by pull cost and desirability. So we have a very, very healthy model. Now you don't have to know what coefficients are, but basically for every 1 point of pull cost score increase, you're going to see a price point increase by about 19%. For desirability score, it's almost twice that. So for every desirability score point you go up, you're seeing a 41% increase in price. So desirability is about twice as impactful as pull cost in determining the overall market price, but they both do play a role and a pretty significant one.
Und dieser Score setzt sich zusammen aus Artwork und Pokémon oder nur Pokémon? Das habe ich jetzt nicht ganz verstanden. Aus beiden, oder? Weil der wird ja gleich gewichtet.
Now let's see, if you put it through our magic little formula here, this is the price that we are seeing for our top chase cards. Now, let's just start at the very top. Gardevoir from Scarlet and Violet base. Now, its pull cost, that looks like a lot, but relatively speaking, that's only a 1.4 to pull this card across, you know, how hard it is to pull and how much it costs to pull some of our top chase cards from other sets. Now, desirability score is about mid. We're expecting a price of around $71. The market price for this card happens to be around $65, so it's right within that range, right? Now, let's move on to a different card, something like the Charizard 223 from Obsidian Flames.
Finde ich das vom Paladin Fates cooler. Weil Shiny ist leider. Aber ist auch cool.
That was kind of the thing that backfired, I think, for a lot of people, realizing like, oh, hey, this Charizard's pretty cool from Obsidian Flames. Oh, wait, you have it too? Oh, wait, you have it too? Oh, everyone has this card? Oh, shoot, this one was really easy to pull. Well, it turns out that has impacted the price pretty significantly. Even though it's a Charizard, it's a 7.8, downgraded a little bit for the artwork. Like, that's kind of the subjective piece of this, right? But because the pull cost is so low, then there you go. You can kind of expect a pretty low price. So, you know, it's not perfect, but we're saying there's probably some wiggle room, at least compared to how Charizard typically performs.
Ich bin mal gespannt, ob er über dein Paladin Fates Charizard sagt, weil das ist ja geisteskrank undervalued laut eben.
Be valued more than it is, so maybe a little bit undervalued.
Weil Shiny
Same
ist,
thing
oder?
with our 151 Charizard.
Das finde ich overvalued, muss ich sagen. Ich bin kein Fan von dem Artwork at all. Und die ist geistkrank teuer.
We're saying, hey, you know, the pull cost score is mid-low tier. So
aber jetzt mittlerweile geistkrank teuer.
Still, but this is
a highly geisteskrank teuer geworden von 1
And with it being Charizard,
alles 1 ETB ist alles.
Range. And we've only just seen it bump up to 400. So it's almost like the market's finally catching up for how valuable this card should be, right? So I found that to be interesting. So even though I was fretting over this card increasing in value so quickly, it kind of feels like maybe it was destined to be that price to begin with. That's just my interpretation. Something like the Umbreon from Prismatic Evolution. Well, we're modeling that price. We're saying that we're also undervalued a little bit with the market price because this is a super hard
Umbreon is undervalued.
Super costly card.
Oh my god.
And then the desirability score is still really high. So modeling this out.
Ich finde das Artwork cooler als Umbreon, muss ich sagen. Weil da irgendwie mehr passiert auf der Karte.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the big, remember I was saying, look at that Mega Charizard X out there in the middle of nowhere, no man's land. How is it fetching an $800 price? This is where I think there's somewhat of a limitation in the model that can't factor in everything, but also it's telling something. That is, the pull cost for this card is so low. It's a 2. It's easier to pull than others, right? And then it's a highly desired card, but does that really make up this near double in price that we're...
Ich kann mir aber nicht vorstellen, dass die Karte irgendwie mittel- bis kurzfristig fällt oder korrigiert. Glaube ich nicht. Weil die Karte einfach zu cool ist. Und wenn einmal Phantasmal Flames, wenn es toll wird, dieses Set zu öffnen, keine Ahnung, in einem Jahr oder so, wenn irgendwie alle Displays man nicht mehr zu UVP bekommen kann in Geschäften oder gar nicht mehr ausgestellt wird und immer weniger Displays online sind, wird diese Karte geisteskrank skyrocken, glaube ich. Ich glaube nicht, dass sie overvalued gerade ist. Weil ich glaube nämlich, oder beziehungsweise vielleicht ist die Karte aktuell zu teuer, aber ich glaube nicht, dass man sie in Zukunft günstiger einkaufen kann. Und dann ist die Frage, ist sie wirklich overvalued? Weiß ich nicht.
Saying that we're seeing in the market versus what this model is saying. This model is saying this should be around a $500 card, and we're around 800 plus. And it's continuing to climb, which is kind of wild.
Wird auch so weiter hochgehen, glaube ich, bei der Karte erstmal.
Either it's overvalued, or because this card is so highly desired and there's so many new people in the hobby trying to procure the coolest Charizard artwork that's ever existed, that it's going to take some time for this to normalize, because it feels like this is a must-have card that every collector should have. And that is definitely
aber ist eine ziemlich coole Karte.
Price and making it an outlier. Even though it's easier to pull, I think there are a lot of people who are
auch mit der Story, mit dem Glumanda, Glutexo, Glurak, dass sie da so hochgehen. Schon ganz cool.
Flames sets and open them because it's such a Charizard or bust set. That's my interpretation. People would rather take the risk of just buying the card at a high price than take a risk of opening the packs and just getting a lot of trash. I mean, at least cards that aren't that valuable, right? Comparatively. So that's why I think this is in such a weird place, and it's hard to interpret this cleanly, but that's my best interpretation of what I think is happening. I won't go into the too much detail, but the other
Ascended
one's basically like
Hero.
I wanted to just talk about this Pikachu. This Pikachu from
Ist
Ascended
undervalued?
Heroes
Das
is
ist
finally
schon rare.
usurping the Dragonite that was second place for this.
Der ist
It's a
doch crazy.
beautiful.
Wir schauen uns eine Modern-Karte an. Wann kam Ascended Hero raus? Vor einem Monat oder so? Oder keine Ahnung. Mega aktuelles Set und wir haben eine Karte irgendwie für $700 und wir sagen, die ist undervalued. Das ist doch geisteskrank, oder? What the fuck? Also ist eine coole Karte, dieses Forest Pikachu, aber ich weiß nicht, ob die undervalued ist.
Beautiful
Also,
artwork and a universally acclaimed Pokemon. It's no duh that this one should be one of the top ones. And I think the only reason that Dragonite was fetching a price over the Pikachu
das sieht auch cool
is
aus, finde
because
ich.
Dragonite hasn't had a really good printing or a high rarity tier printing or special illustration.
Was war das letzte Dragonan, was teuer war? Was das in Drachenwandel, oder? Wahrscheinlich. Die sieht auch sehr, sehr sick aus, die Drachenwandel Dragonan. Wie der so auf dem Rücken fliegt.
Printing in a long time since Evolving Skies.
Evolving Skies war das letzte, glaube ich,
It's been a
auch.
long time coming for Dragonite to have a really good, awesome looking. I mean, the Dragonite artwork looks so cool. So I think
Stimmt.
people were ready for a Dragonite, and maybe there's a little bit of a Pikachu overload
Bisschen.
over the past couple
Bisschen.
of years. But that's my interpretation of that. But still, Pikachu is starting to kind of price out Dragonite now, and it kind of makes sense why. Because again, the model is saying it should be a much more.
Ich will mal ganz
highly
kurz schauen,
valued
wie weit sind die voneinander entfernt? Ascended Heroes. Wollen wir uns deutsche oder englische Preise anschauen? Bam. Bam, bam, bam. Aber wir können eben beides anschauen. Zack, zack. Wo sind wir hier? Wo sind wir? Ich will erstmal nur Deutsch mal anschauen, weil das Deutsch günstiger ist in Deutschland, deutsche Karten. Wo sind wir hier? 300, 300, 300 und Pikachu 500 Bulls. Okay. What the fuck? What the fuck? Ja, im Englischen wird es wahrscheinlich genauso sein, oder? Ich wusste nicht, dass die Pikachu gerade so teuer. Aber günstig, das Dragoran, oder? 300 für Deutsch? 500 zu Englisch? Noch eine und dann 900. What the fuck? Ist auch ziemlich viel ziemlich wenig Ware am Markt aktuell, ne? Unglaublich. Das war eigentlich ziemlich cool. 300 geht eigentlich. Ich finde, bei der Pikachu ist es cool, dass es zur Chinese Pikachu-Karte passt. Meinst du mit dem Gengar im Hintergrund? Stimmt. Das hier tags und nachts mit dem Gengar. Sogar beide haben den Baum. Den Baum rechts. Ja, genau.
Because of its pull cost score is very high.
Stimmt, das ist
and
ziemlich
then the
cool.
desirability score is higher than Dragonite. So, all right. My voice is going out because I've recorded this multiple times and I haven't liked any of the takes. But that's it for me. I hope you like this video. If you like the details, you like the data, then man, this channel's for you. If you don't like the data, this is boring to you, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't even know how you got to this point in the video if that wasn't part of your what you were interested in. So, but anyways, all right. I will see you in the next video. Please let me know what you think. Do you think this model is... Which one of these cards do you think are overvalued, undervalued? Do you think the model is accurate? Do you think that we still have a lot of adjustment and normalization in the market to kind of get towards some of what this model is saying? Just curious to your thoughts and feedback. Let me know. And other than that, we'll see you in the next video.
Okay. Poker Data Guy. Machen wir mal ein Like für seine Mühen. Ich frage mich, kann man sich das anschauen, diese Liste? Ist a Professional Data Analyst, Collector, buckle up, don't forget to check out my, was ist das für ein Link? Best Set to Rip Leaderboard? What the fuck? Okay. Aber haben wir hier irgendwo auch Packox Calculator? Was ist das für eine coole Seite? Card Leaderboard. Aha. PESA 10 zu Raw-Preis $4.000. Okay. Das ist ja, warte mal, das kann ich mir sogar saven. Das ist sogar eine ziemlich coole Seite. Boom. Das tue ich mir rein unter Infos. So, aber haben wir hier irgendwo sein Tool? Ich würde gerne mir anschauen, was er alles sagt. Also, was ist undervalued, was ist overvalued? Das haben wir nicht, gell? Aber ist okay. War ein cooles Video, kann man nichts sagen. Ich weiß nicht, ist halt super schwierig, die Karte zu. Es gibt mehrere Chinese